listen to. So when we think about podcasts, we shared a little bit about what our podcast is about, who it's for, and the why. And I think it's really important to focus in on who is our podcast for and how does it help bring up that area or that group of educators. But for ourselves, how has podcasting helped change the way that you learn and grow in the field of education? I know that there are podcasts that I cycle through Monday, Tuesday. Well, I used to on my drive into work. Now, I just listen to whenever I can. COVID-19, a little crazy. But I know that there's some podcasts that I have on that I subscribe to and that I listen to on a daily basis. House of Ed Tech, EduMatch Tweet and Talk, Burned In Teacher, just to name a few. And I know that these podcasts have really helped. I know there's been so many times where I've gone in Monday morning or Wednesday morning and I say, I just heard this on a podcast, guys. And they're like, oh, she's listened to another podcast. But I think it's so important to get those ideas out there because I can say something as Dr. Fecich, but if a podcaster says it a little bit differently, that, oh, well, so-and-so said it, that, just a different perspective, a different lens, a different viewpoint can really help. Maybe it's just said in a different way. I mean, we all learn in different ways. So I think having extra voices in our classrooms or in our districts or with our faculty can really help support their learning and our own learning. But how has podcasting changed the way that you learn and grow in the field of education? And Sarah, I'm going to start with you. So how has podcasting changed the way you've been learning in the field?
Yeah, so just like you, I am a very avid consumer of podcasts. Like, I don't even know how many I've subscribed to. Don't ask. I'm guessing it's about 500 at this point. I don't even know. And I don't listen to all of them, but, I have them come up. And when I see like an episode that catches my attention, I add it to the queue. So generally, I will listen to podcasts like when I am lifting weights or when I'm getting ready in the morning. On my drive into work, Voxer usually occupies that time, but there has not been a drive into work. There has not been lifting weights. There has not been any of these moments that I usually listen to podcasts over the past couple weeks. So I'm kind of hurting to get some podcasts back into my life right now. But I'll do it though. I'll do it. But as you were, like you were saying, then there's so many things that I'll hear on a podcast. And I'm just like, wow, that is really amazing. So I will keep note of it. Sometimes, I'll take like things I hear and put it on my to-do list or in a OneNote if I want to come back to it later. And, I like to listen to a variety of different podcasts. Like there are some amazing ones done by people in our PLN, and I definitely listen and subscribe and share. And there are also ones from outside the field that I like to listen to as well. And they kind of, listening to those, definitely brings a different perspective in, and I'm able to integrate things that people might be doing in other fields and bring those into like my teaching or, suggestions or like research more. Like they could be a springboard for ideas and things like that. So I really love podcasts and just how much they help us to learn and to grow and to push ourselves.
Thank you so much. So for our listeners out there, you can check out Spotify, Pocket Cast, Google Podcasts. I was afraid I was going to say Google Play, Apple. What's the Apple one?
Podcasts.
Thank you. Apple Podcasts. And you can subscribe. So that means when you subscribe to a podcast that you'll get all the notifications when new episodes drop. So sometimes I know that there's a podcast that I enjoy, Amy Porterfield, who does Online Marketing Made Easy, and she does bonus episodes. She doesn't tell anybody, but if you subscribe, you get the inside scoop. So I love that because it's kind of like our own little community, like, oh, there's a bonus episode. And I love doing that as well for my listeners with the bonus episode. But if you subscribe to podcasts, that means that you'll get notified anytime that there's a new episode that goes out. And like Sarah said, usually it's free to download the pod catchers or any of the ones that are on your phone, and you can listen to them there as well. Chris, what about you? What are some of your best practices when it comes to, I'm going to start with best practices for listening and sharing out podcasts that you like, and then we'll go into the learning, how it's helped you as a learner.
I mean, I would say best practices for listening. I don't really know if I understand the question per se. I mean, if you subscribe to a show, go ahead.
Yeah, so for some of my listeners, they're new to podcasting. For them, so after I listen to my podcast or after I listen to an episode, what can I do after that? I can put something into action. I can share it out. So what are some ways I can still engage after I listen to that episode? That's kind of what I was going with that.
Okay, that's a fantastic question, because this is something that I do like to yell at people on the internet to do. So I would say, after you listen to a show, or if you're subscribed to a show that you find value in, number one, tell somebody else about that podcast. Word of mouth is the best way to share a podcast that you're enjoying. So go to the faculty room, put a post on Twitter or social media, and just recommend that other people listen to the podcast. If you know of somebody specifically who would get value from a certain episode, let them know, hey, go download this podcast, go subscribe to this episode. That's first and foremost. If you find value, tell somebody else who might find value. Number two, reach out to the creator, the host or host of a podcast, and send them an email. Go to their website and, tag them on Twitter. Thank them for the content that they're creating. As Sarah said, 99.9% of the podcasts are free, which means the people creating them, they're not in it to make a buck. They're taking their time, they're putting their efforts out there to create content. Say thank you. Send them an email. If they've got, a way to leave voicemail feedback, do that. Even if you don't expect to hear it on a future episode. Not every podcast does that, but every podcaster wants to hear some type of feedback, even if it's negative. Go out and tell a podcaster that they suck. It's something, but give them a reason why maybe you don't like their show. And maybe you can help to shape the content or how they're doing it. So those would be my two things after listening to a podcast.
I love that. That's exactly what I was looking for. Sorry, I didn't phrase that properly. So if we think about some ways that podcasting has helped you grow as a learner for your high school students and for your role at Rutgers, how has listening to podcasts and consuming podcasts, how has that helped you grow in the field of education?
It keeps me on my toes. If I'm going to be the one who creates a podcast called The House of Ed Tech, I better be up to date and aware of things that are going on with that topic to be able to talk about for myself, or to know who to go out and try and talk to bring them onto my show. With what I do at the secondary, in higher education, what I do at Rutgers actually has nothing to do with education. I work in the School of Communication. So just the fact that I create content and I am communicating in this medium, I'm able to kind of push college kids to maybe put their voice out there in a different way, and not just, tweet the next meme or, find something stupid to do on Instagram, but to really push them to put their voices out there. And I also make recommendations of things to listen to because of the variety of content that I consume. I'm not just consuming education podcasts or technology podcasts. I consume all sorts of stuff, just like, Sarah does. The net is cast far and wide, and I'm just trying to grow as a person. If we focus on growing as a content creator, as, learning as much as we can about all kinds of topics, that'll help us as teachers. The old NBC, the more you know. Yeah, as a content creator, the more I know, the more I listen to, the bigger the variety. Yes, Sarah knows the star. That's what we're going for. If you want to be a better person, listen to all types of content, listen to podcasts, read books, listen to audiobooks, consume. And I assume at some point we will talk about how to take what you're consuming and what you're passionate about and press record.
And that's what we're going to right now. Yes.
Boom, boom.
So, but